sometimes it's not you. Sometimes it's just a number of factors that have impacted you. And so just know that your failures or your success as a gardener doesn't define you, and just to give it a shot again. And everyone has a green thumb. Everyone has a green thumb.
The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of Green Acres and our guests. These general gardening tips and suggestions may work for you, as well as those from alternative sources. When using any garden products or tools, read and follow all label directions. And learn how to make your yard summer strong at bewatersmart.info.
The Green Acres Garden Podcast is the podcast dedicated to helping gardeners hone their growing skills while we celebrate our love of plants. So whether you're new to growing or a seasoned gardener, you're sure to learn something new. Join the fun as we have conversations with world-class growers, passionate green thumbs, and professional garden experts from Green Acres Nursery and Supply. Listen every week. We'll answer questions you didn't know you had. And I hope you like gardening too. All right, let's get started. Welcome, Green Thumbs, all you beautiful gardeners out there. Welcome to the show, one and all. This is the Green Acres Garden Podcast. We have a great episode for you this week. We're going to have so much fun talking plants because fall is for planting. We have two incredible guests to share with you. Actually, I had more fun than a gardener should be allowed to have with other gardeners. They shouldn't let us group up. It's pandemonium was had. But before we get into them, let's say hello to Austin on the microphone. He is the Curly Cultivator. How's it going there, Austin?
Hello, Kevin, and welcome back to our show. To all of you wonderful green thumbs out there. Kevin, how are you doing this week?
I'm doing good. All right, so week 2 or 3 of having students. I'm still here. Haven't ripped out every hair on my head, but I'm doing great. Life's good, man.
Yeah.
Twins are good. They're keeping me up every night, but garden is looking good.
I know, because I actually got to go with you and shoot there the other day.
That was cool.
I got to see all of your plants in their glory. Everything does look amazing there. You've done such great work.
Not perfect, but you know what? It's looking fine. We did okay, and we're already looking towards the future around that corner, and we have a couple of amazing guests to look around that corner with. Actually, some guests that I wish would have sat near me in school and been my best friends.
That would have been fun.
Because that's the energy they gave off. You're like, I hope you sit next to me so we can all be best friends.
Yes.
For sure.
Yeah, we had a great time. We had the return of the Curly Cultivators this week, which is awesome. We talked to them a while back, and they're just really good energy, fun gardeners to talk to.
You know it.
They're really, really positive, and they make it fun, which is what we try to do here too. So I really appreciate that.
For our listeners who maybe don't know, that Leota and Mikaela, they are Instagram famous for sure. Some local garden heroes to me. And like you said, they make gardening fun, accessible, and they're really informative. And for me, I love seeing their videos pop up in my feed. It's actually content that I truly like and enjoy, as opposed to all the other stuff we get, shoved down our faces. Yeah. Theirs is great because it's like fires you up. It makes you want to grow and cultivate. It reminds you why gardening is kind of fun, and you just you get to kind of participate a little bit. So it was kind of fun getting into to sit down and just have a little garden fun with them, a little blast.
Yeah, I totally agree. And this is the time where we're starting to talk transitions. We're starting to talk fall is for planting, and it happens to be perfect timing for me because I just got that plot at the community garden, and this episode we're talking about fall planting. And I went there today. I started measuring the plot out and starting to figure this out. So other people might be at that same stage too.
How big was your plot?
It's 13 feet by 20 feet, something like that.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty big. Yeah.
13 by 20. That's huge, dude.
You mentioned trying square foot gardening, and I'm like, ooh.
No, that's a lot of space.
I don't even.
And that's impressive, dude. You're gonna have a massive garden. Actually,
that is. I might
cool.
start, not trying to maximize the space, but really just focus on the things I really want, and maybe do decent amount of multiples of those things.
Well, then this is the episode for you, Austin.
I know. Here we go. So with that in mind, in the spirit of fall is for planting, let's go ahead and dive into our talk with the Curly Cultivators. We met up with Leota and Mikaela actually at our Green Acres support office, and let's go ahead and jump into that interview now. Here we go.
All right, so I'm here with two incredible gardeners and just all around cool people. Please introduce yourselves. I'm here with
Mikaela.
And Leota.
And together you are?
The Curly Cultivators.
And we actually have an Instagram account and TikTok account where we share gardening knowledge and allow people to grow alongside us. We answer a lot of gardening questions. We create almost daily gardening content. And we invite people to come along on our gardening journey.
So first of all, how you been? I know summer was scorching hot. Did you survive it?
Barely.
Yeah?
Yeah, this is a hot one.
It got a little warm there.
I do think that this felt like an exceptionally hot summer, and I think it's because of all the days around like 114 that we spent consecutively, and it just felt uniquely hot this summer.
Did you do anything specific to kind of support your plants in your garden during when it got hot, or are you just like, hey, we're riding it out?
Yeah, we did.
Aside from thoughts and prayers.
Just going
And
inside,
good
drinking water,
vibes,
going, I
right.
hope it works.
We actually, Mikaela mostly finessed this 20 by 20 shade structure.
Nice.
Yeah.
So that our main vegetable garden, like the annual vegetables, could be protected a bit from the scorching sun. And that has worked pretty well, actually.
Yeah, I built it out of PVC and a bunch of
Yeah.
elbows, and we had a shade cloth that we used a previous year that was like 30 by 20, and so it's like draped over
pretty
it.
big.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like 9 feet tall, and yeah, so it allows our tomatoes to grow to like their full extent, and then
Wow.
they're touching the top and coming back down, and so it's really helped out.
Does it make being out in the garden a little,
yeah.
little nicer?
It actually does. And the peak of the heat in particular, it feels like 10-ish degrees cooler
Noticeable
compared
for
to,
sure.
yeah.
Oh, that's rad.
But we try to not change our watering schedules and stuff. Plants are pretty resilient overall, and they tend to bounce back. But I think the important thing for us is just deep watering, mulching, the things that we would normally do to support our plants. The reality is there are farmers who are doing this on a massive scale, and they're not putting out shade cloth for every single tomato plant that they have in their fields, right? So if they can do it, we can do it. But it's just about making those small tweaks and really just setting yourself up for success anyways. You never know. Even if we're in a 90-degree summer and we don't even hit 100, which will never happen here ever again.
One can hope.
One can hope, yeah. But if we were in that place ever again, which we won't be, but if we ever were to be in that type of summer or find ourselves
We
in
could
that
travel.
sort of summer. Yeah,
Right.
if we
Travel
traveled, if we
somewhere,
moved elsewhere,
experience
if you're a podcast listener
Vacation.
out there in Minnesota maybe or something like that, the reality is that you still need to set yourself up for success by doing things like mulching and deep watering because your plants appreciate it anyway. So those things that
Good
we would
weather or
normally
not.
do,
Yeah.
Right.
yeah, exactly, are things that we always practice. So.
Now, I know you're very humble in all your wonderful success, but what has been one plant in particular that was actually did really well for you this summer that maybe you were surprised by, or something that was just extra delicious that might have been a new variety, something interesting that you grew this summer that really surprised you?
One thing that we harvested this past week, and I took a bite of it and almost passed out because it was so delicious, was the Flavor King Pluot. It's
Nice.
only our second year. The first year we harvested, which was last year, we only got one single fruit that we left on the tree to be able to taste it. And this year we have maybe, 20 fruit.
Next year you're going to
my
have like
goodness.
200.
I know, I'm ready.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I am ready. I'm going to eat all 200 in one sitting.
We've tried to plant all of our trees so that they produce fruit at different times.
Love
and
it.
so that's how we select things. We have a whole calendar, and we just try and make sure that we don't have any gaps throughout the year between blueberries and oranges and limes and
You're getting me
all
hungry.
the things. Yeah, different types of berries and plums, pluots.
It's like a paradise that like one creates for themselves that you have actually done. It's pretty
Yeah.
cool. Like I think people like imagine like wouldn't it be nice if I had a home with a garden and we ate with the seasons and we had all these things and it's like, but then you've done it. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And you're
really
working on it
cool.
still.
Yeah, it's just bit by bit, and I think that's one of the things that people really connect with is that we haven't done this all at once. This has been a really long process for us, but at the same time, every year is even more rewarding, knowing that like we planted a fruit tree, for example, 4 or 5 years ago, and now we're really seeing the
investment.
benefits. Yeah, and so it's fun to be able to share the progress with folks.
If you're ready for it, can we talk like getting ready for fall?
Yeah,
Let's do
please,
it.
let's do it.
Oh, perfect. Okay. So, like I said, it's hot right now, but soon it won't be. You brought up 90-degree temperatures. I think maybe around the corner at some point, hopefully in the future, we'll see 90 or cooler. Different things grow, obviously, when the temperature changes. What are some of the things that you're looking forward to either growing or the tasks that, like, what makes it for a successful transition? Maybe where we should start from summer garden into fall. What should we be thinking about pulling out first and then replacing? Personally, for me, I just pulled out a few rows of beans, like little knee-high kind of.
Yeah.
They're just done. You know, they're
Yeah.
not looking good at this point. They're seasons. So now I'm looking towards the future. What should I be doing?
There's a few things that naturally come to mind, and one of them you kind of already alluded to, which is making sure that you look at what's performing well and what perhaps is slowing down a little bit, what crops are slowing down and not producing as much, or that are diseased or have other issues.
Yeah, powdery
pull
mildew.
those first.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
We don't need powdery mildew in our lives. Let's pull it.
No.
So that's the first thing, is just pulling things that naturally are a bit spent or diseased. Also, you don't want the disease to spread,
That's smart.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, pull
great
it
advice.
early.
Yeah. The second thing that I would say is there are some people who like to grow tomatoes up until November, or like closer to when our
I'm
first
guilty
frost
of that
happens.
at some point in my career. I'm not going to do it this year, but sometimes I do. I've been guilty, but
Yeah, so that's totally fine. But for us, since we have a relatively small space for our vegetable garden, we have to make some difficult decisions at some point. So it's not necessarily like on November 1st, that's when you have to pull your tomatoes, or a specific date for us, but it really is thinking about the timing and what we want to plant in the fall. So for example, there are things like brassica,
love 'em.
crops like cauliflower, cabbage, even collard greens
Love
or
'em.
broccoli, all of those things that we love and get
Yes.
really excited about, they take a little bit longer to mature.
some bok choy.
So they're going to need more space, or not more space, but more time in the ground.
Oh,
So
yeah.
those are things that we would typically plant around end of September or mid-September, which is just around the corner. It's pretty wild.
I've made the mistake of waiting too long, where they don't have enough time to kind of really get rooted in.
Yeah.
And they don't end up doing as well. They kind of like end up kind of weak and spindly by the time the weather gets a little too chilly, and they're
Yeah.
not what they probably could have been. Have you seen that
Totally.
before? I've done that.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
especially in the springtime even.
Yeah.
When March or April hits, things start to bolt. That
Yeah.
precious cabbage that you've been looking at every day to see like each and every layer form
Uh-huh. Oh, yeah.
now has aphids all over it, and it's not got a big head. It
Yeah,
has like
yeah,
a
yeah.
tiny little head. You can still eat it, I guess, but timing is really critical for the fall garden. So thinking about what you want to let go. And then what we do is amend our soil with some type of organic amendment. Typically that looks like compost or some type of general soil amendment like
Do you have a personal favorite?
We like a lot of things in the EB Stone line. So we use their compost or their soil amendment that comes in the orange bag.
Soil booster.
Or soil booster,
Yeah.
rather. And we sometimes add in some worm castings, a little bit of Sure Start, mix it all together like a big pot of soup.
I know.
Okay, not actually mix
It's
it
a
together.
recipe for
we
sure.
actually layer it kind of like lasagna, so maybe
Oh,
that's
there
a
we go.
better comparison. Water it in, and then we usually try to let that just sit, let the soil rest for a week or two before we start our next round of planting.
I love it. Your soil must be just rich, especially if you're doing that. Are you doing that once a year or twice? How often do you think you do
We
that?
end up doing it typally twice a year.
Yeah.
At the change
Fall
of the
and
season.
spring, yeah.
Yeah, once at the beginning of fall and once at this kind of end of the end of spring, just before summer.
Yep.
Makes total sense.
Yeah.
That's what we do at the school, and it works out pretty darn well.
Right?
It does, and we don't disturb our soil when we get ready to plant either. We practice no-till gardening.
Yeah, so you don't get
so-
that rototiller out there and just grind it into powder.
No, unless it's like an area that really needs to be worked over. But in our actual vegetable garden, we don't do any of that. We just cut our vegetables 1 inch below the soil surface, let them be, and we just continue to add.
I love it.
Okay, I forgot something
Yeah, please.
on the list of things I'm excited to grow. I am a salad girly. I love a garden fresh salad. So carrots, even though they can be a little tricky to germinate for some people, I'm really excited about being able to put my carrots, radishes, kale, and maybe even some other mixed greens like arugula or lettuce
Ooh, it's all spicy, kind of nutty.
together
Oh,
in
yeah.
a delicious salad combination.
I love it.
And lettuce is one of like the easiest things to grow in my opinion. That's also somewhat gratifying in terms of like being something you can direct so you don't have to put a lot of time and effort into it, and it's super rewarding because you can keep harvesting throughout the entire season.
There's something to being able to just walk out in your backyard with a harvest basket and some scissors and just bring in your salad
Yeah.
to wash
Oh,
off
yeah.
and then eat. And you're like, whoa, this was on a plant 20 minutes ago.
Yeah. And arugula that you grow at home has such an intense flavor compared to what anything folks will find in stores. And the flowers for arugula taste so delicious.
Really?
They taste like spicy peanuts.
They do.
They definitely have
The
a nutty...
leaves are kind of that spicy nuttiness.
Yeah, well, the flowers get that same exact taste. So when it bolts, it's actually a gift. And I didn't really know that until we went to the farmer's market and someone was selling a bunch of arugula flowers for like, I don't know, like $10 or something. And I was like, I have that at home. And then I was like, they must taste good or something.
Yeah, they're
Try
expensive.
them. Oh my gosh, yeah, they taste amazing. So.
Right on. Well, when you bring up like the salad greens and the lettuce, our summers are a bit warm. Like, have you ever tried growing lettuce in the summer here?
We don't.
It's difficult, right? So the fall and spring, it seems like it's perfect timing.
Yeah, we don't grow lettuce in the summer. There's quite a few things that we don't try and grow in the summer, like cilantro, for example, where we know it probably can happen, but it bolts so quickly that it just kind of is disappointing. But that's all the more reason to plant things in fall, because things that would normally bolt here in our hot summers can get a fighting chance, and a lot of places can't grow things in the fall and winter like we can.
Yeah,
and
we're pretty fortunate.
Yeah, we're so lucky. And so there are so many things that we can grow, and we really look forward to it. So we actually can't wait to see the starts arrive at Green Acres and do our little browsing.
Now, Mikaela, you brought up annual flowers that you'll be changing out for the fall. And that's a big deal, too. And we can go that direction as well, because flowers go pretty hard in the summer when it's hot. But that's only some flowers. The petunias, the zinnias, they're going to start fading.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so what are the ones that you're probably going to transition into?
Oh my gosh. Well, some of our favorites are like pansies,
yeah.
sweet pea flowers, which are not edible. And so folks who are listening, don't eat sweet pea flowers. Yeah, definitely toxic. So not a great thing to eat. But sweet pea flowers are amazing. They bring a lot of joy. I love planting snapdragons.
Oh, yeah.
And so there are just a bunch of things that we can grow in the winter that, bring a little life to the garden, really bring a lot of joy, and that color in the middle of winter. When you look out and everything else is dormant, getting to see something that's flowering brings a lot of life.
For sure, because it kind of goes against, you're like, oh, everything's kind of dwindling. It's like we're fading into the winter. And it's like, no, there's some things that actually like the cool weather, and they're doing good. You brought up cilantro. It's incredible how well cilantro does when it gets really nippy outside.
Oh, yeah.
You're like, whoa, it's like very chilly. Like we had like a frost yesterday, or like a light frost. And it's like, I'm fine, thanks.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks for checking.
And it tastes
I don't need
really good
intervention.
still. Yeah, it's kind of cool to see the plants that will really thrive in those conditions, where it's like, tomato is going to be like, no thank you, I'm dead now.
Exactly.
Same thing with dill and parsley that are super easy to grow from seed too. They thrive in the wintertime, so
we can start them now.
That too. Yeah.
Oh yeah, no big deal. Sorry.
I see what you did there.
No, sorry, yeah. Been waiting all week for that one. yeah, for sure. Well, I'm having so much fun. I'm learning a lot. What do you think would be a good, like, if you're talking to somebody who just came off their first summer of growing? Maybe they had some success. Maybe they struggled a little bit, and they didn't have the success they needed. What would be your words of encouragement and guidance coming from your perspective, having kind of had a few seasons under your belt, more than a few, and really been in that garden getting after it? Like, what would be your words of encouragement?
I mean, first, it sounds like in this scenario, the person would have had some wins. So kudos to you for having some successes. It's helpful to document those. Both your successes and areas where you were less successful, or where you had serious challenge, or you couldn't identify a pest issue or disease that your plant was experiencing, so that way you can do your research when the weather is cooler outside, and you can plan ahead for the next season to hopefully not have that same issue.
Great advice.
The other thing I would say is every gardener has one plant at least that they're like, oh man, I wish I could grow this particular plant a bit better with more success or higher yield. And it could be you and your practices. It could be watering, the soil that you planted in, where you planted it, all kinds of those types of things that you can control and based on the environment. And maybe it's not any of those things. Like, you could have just had a bad year. So don't be discouraged. You got this. And also, there's so many things that you can plant in the fall. So keep the party train going and keep planting.
I love it. That's fantastic advice.
Yeah, I think I would probably say the same. Honestly, I was thinking about documenting what worked well and then thinking about what didn't go well, and not to harp on that, or not to harp on yourself for that, but just to think about the things about like planting time, watering schedules. Just like sometimes those little tweaks make a world of a difference. And a lot of times too, people get so excited about planting. Sometimes they're planting on like mid-February, as far as like getting tomatoes in the ground. That's not a great time. Or they're planting really late because they were inspired early summer and then are waiting until July to get their garden put in for the summer. Sometimes it's not you. Sometimes it's just a number of factors that have impacted you. And so just know that your failures or your success as a gardener doesn't define you, and just to give it a shot again. And everyone has a green thumb. Everyone has a green thumb. One of the things that I think people do a lot of times is they want to duplicate everything that they see online, for example, but they're not seeing a million steps. They might be seeing 1 or 2 steps. And so there's a lot to gardening, and like a lot of resources out there. And so for folks to really dabble in and get curious and pull things up and do research, like gardening there's a lot to it. And so, but it's also really exciting. And the more you know, the more powerful you're going to be in your garden. And so take advantage of all the resources that are out there. That's what the number one thing that I would tell someone for sure.
Are there resources that you both reach out to, like first and foremost? Like where do you go to learn a little bit?
Yeah.
Like where do you start?
The UC system the University of California system has a really great set of online resources. The one that comes to mind for me as we're thinking about like pests and disease and things like that is the integrated pest management part of their website. Has so much information with photos that helps you identify the pest and then treat it in the least invasive, harmful way possible first, if you want to take that approach. So I found that to be really helpful for us.
Absolutely. And the ANR website too through the UC is really helpful in thinking about
like agriculture, natural resources.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Agriculture,
I've been both
natural
of there.
resources.
Yeah, these are great.
Has 1 million resources on there, and they're connected with the Master Gardener program too. And so looking up Master Gardener resources for your specific county, it makes a huge difference to be able to hear from other folks. And sometimes it's like you already had an inkling of what something was or maybe what went wrong, but you just need confirmation. And so, or, you maybe knew what something was, but you didn't know how to treat it or what to do exactly in the next season. And so all these resources are really helpful. Those are our top resources because they're research-based, and so we really trust them.
And they're specific to our area, like you were mentioning for like Sacramento County, for example. And since gardening can oftentimes be so location specific or like hyper local, it's really helpful to read articles and dabble in research that's specifically focused on our region.
That's a great point, because it's kind of difficult to get, like, we give advice, but it's very kind of tailor-made to certain types of climates.
Yeah.
And so it's good to know, I can get research, but it's got to be to my own local region.
Yeah,
Totally.
absolutely. It makes a big difference. And we get a lot of questions too through like our Instagram where people will write us about things that we don't experience ourselves. So for example, squash vine borers. That's not
You're
something.
like, what's that?
and we know what, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Because
like,
we're not familiar
yeah.
with it firsthand, but there are things where we can point people to these resources that still exist for their region too. And so for example, for the folks in Texas, universities across the nation have these agriculture and natural resources divisions that run Master Gardener programs. They're going to have resources for folks. And so, guiding people to resources that will help them is really important. But just knowing that they exist is that first step.
Yeah, that's great. So if you had words of encouragement maybe for younger folks who are on the bubble, right? And if they don't know anything about plants, what would be your words of encouragement to help get them fired up about why plants are cool, why they're important, and how they can kind of enrich your life a little bit?
Yeah, I think the number one thing for me is to start small and manageable with what you know that your time will allow for, so that you know you're going to be successful. And then to just plant what brings you joy, whether that's a food item and you like to cook, or heck, you just really like pickles and you're like, I want to make a jar of pickles. Grow one cucumber plant. That's totally fine and an acceptable way to enter into gardening. You don't have to do it all. You don't have to start with, having an entire farm in your backyard. Start where whatever brings you joy. Or you just like to pick flowers and you want to grow sunflowers. That is totally fine. And so it's okay to just plant one plant. It's okay to start small. And it's also okay to go big and then just take notes about what went well and what didn't. But just figure out how much time do you want to dedicate to it and then work within that.
I have so many fond memories of gardening or growing food and flowers alongside my mom in particular growing up. And those are some of the memories that I still hold very deeply and fondly. So it can be a really fun experience too, even if you're like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just going to throw some seeds out there and see what happens. And much like anything else in the classroom or perhaps like extracurricular activities outside the classroom, gardening is such a cool learning process. You're never going to be an expert. And that's just something that any real gardener will honestly tell you. And it's so cool to sit back, observe what's happening, like notice the changes that are happening, for example, over the course of time with the plant. Think about what inputs you've offered and then what the outcomes are. So like tracking the process of going from a seed to harvest, for example, like planting a seed and then seeing a sunflower that you harvest or a tomato that you get to pick fresh off the vine is such a cool and rewarding learning experience.
The other thing that it makes me think about too, with it being a rewarding experience, and sometimes you're doing that alongside others, and that's a piece that can bring you joy. For example, you mentioned growing alongside your mom. Knowing that, especially for young folks, it's getting really hard to buy a house. I mean, it has been hard.
Yeah, for sure.
And so access to housing and land isn't something that everyone has the ability to have access to. And so there are a lot of great ways to get into gardening that don't mean that you're going to have a full-on garden. For example, talking to a friend who maybe has a space, like for example, we have space. And if any of our friends ever want to come over and help, we're happy to have them learn alongside us. Talk to folks who...
I might take you up on that.
Yeah, talk to folks who are elderly and maybe need a little bit of help in their garden. Maybe it's your neighbor down the way, or maybe it's just someone who goes to your church, or, a family friend, and offer to help them. And so do it as an act of service. Think about the community service days too that are available to everyone. One of the things that we did not too long ago, actually it was past winter, but the summer has gone by so fast, was volunteer at a rose garden for pruning. And so we have roses at home. I think we know how to prune pretty darn well, but there's a lot of knowledge out there too. And so we really got a lot of joy from volunteering alongside folks who've been doing this for decades longer than we have, and the knowledge that they can impart. And so gardening is always fun to do in community, and doing it as an act of service makes a big difference. And so maybe it's not something that you're starting from A to Z, but you're just joining someone else along on the ride. That can bring a lot of joy too.
Yeah, there's so many different ways to cultivate.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool, and it only takes just a little couple feet of open soil for a garden to start.
Yeah,
absolutely. It could even just be a pot. When there's a will, there's a way. And we have a lot of space too. And so if someone's living in an apartment, for example, they notice that there's like an abandoned garden bed, where that used to have flowers or whatever, think about using that space and talking to, your landlord. And so there are a lot of opportunities out there.
Get creative.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if all else fails, you can grow a lot of stuff in a small container, like herbs, for example. You don't have to grow everything that you eat, and nor is that ever, for example, our goal. But starting with simple things that you really love, like growing your favorite herb, is a great way to start.
And they're really a great way to, once you start eating some fresh herbs, it's kind of like a hook. You're like, my food tastes good now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's like, it's fresh, I just cut it and grew it, and you watch it grow back, it's like, it's intoxicating. It's like herbs will get you. Watch out, people.
They're a gateway to
they're gateway to gardening like crazy. It's like that and chickens. You're like, oh, I guess I'm into plants and food now.
You've been warned.
Yeah.
I would add that the fall garden typically is a little slower paced than summer gardening. So in the summer, you might find yourself at the peak of the season going outside every day to harvest something or take care of a specific task. For me, I think the fall garden is a bit more low maintenance because it's slower paced. It's going to take a while for many of the crops to fully mature, and I love that. It feels like you can take it with ease.
That is a great point. I don't think we brought that up earlier, but that's a fantastic point because it is like not just the temperature and everything, it's just the pace of the gardening, the amount of effort put in, it's a little less.
Yeah, definitely.
And there's less pests.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
And
I would
less
argue.
stress on the plants, I've noticed. I'm like, less issue. I'm not worried about, it's going to get this temperature, that temperature. For the most part, you're just kind of rolling with the punches.
Absolutely.
Well, I could talk with you two, honestly, all day and all night. I honestly could. I've had so much fun with you. I'm curious to see what comes next in your gardening adventure. I'll probably come over. You guys are growing hops or something weird. Going
never know.
wild over
That'd
there.
be amazing.
Right? You've seen them grow up those like ropes
Yeah.
or whatever. It's pretty cool. But anywho, thank you so much. And I have one last request. And you can totally say no. Can you say my outro with me? I always say happy gardening to you all, and please never stop growing.
Yeah.
If I say happy gardening to you all, can we all chime in? Please never, or never stop growing. Happy gardening to you all,
And never stop growing. Like, absolutely not.
We could do better.
This is awful.